Sean Stockman has more than 814,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel alone.
It is really impressive, and on it you will find Sean helping people in Detroit do things like clean up their yards and
the man who stopped driving past broken things. Most people slow down. They feel something. And then they keep going. He got out of the car. That's really where this story begins. Not with a camera, not with a plan, not with any idea that what he was about to do would matter to anyone beyond himself. Just a man standing on a sidewalk in one of America's most forgotten cities, looking at something broken and deciding he couldn't just leave it that way. But here's what you don't know yet. A few years into this work, alone on a property in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, something happened that shook him to his core. He posted about it while he was still visibly rattled. Said it could have permanently changed the course of his life. Called it his closest call yet. And then he showed up the next morning and kept going. That moment tells you everything about who this man is. But to really understand it, to understand why he was there at all, why he walked away from 2 decades of security to do physical labor in a struggling city for strangers who couldn't pay him, you have to go back further. Back to a corporate office in Michigan where a man was quietly disappearing and where the people watching him finally said something nobody expected. For nearly 20 years, he had a career that looked exactly right on paper. He worked in the automotive industry, built his way up from nothing, started a family young, and kept showing up. Steady income, a title, a clear path forward. Everything the world tells you to want, neatly stacked in front of him. And he was suffocating inside it. Not dramatically. Not in a way that made for good stories at dinner. Just quietly, consistently, in the way that a life that doesn't fit eventually starts to feel like wearing someone else's clothes every single day. He had spent years before that job doing something completely different. Editing video. Not corporate content. Wedding videos. Other people's happiest days, captured through a lens, while his own days felt increasingly gray. The creative part of him never went away. It just had nowhere to go during business hours. So it leaked out on weekends in side projects, and the visible difference between who he was when he was doing something he loved and who he was when he was doing what he was supposed to do. His bosses noticed that gap. That's the detail most people miss when they hear this story. They weren't watching to write him up. They were watching because they could see something in him that he was struggling to see in himself. They pulled him aside, not to push him harder, not to threaten his position, but to say something that cracked open a door he'd been staring at for years. They told him he had something worth following, that the energy he brought to his own work was real, and it deserved more room than a corporate schedule could give it. That conversation didn't transform him overnight. Change rarely works like that. But something shifted. For 20 years, he had been waiting for an internal permission slip that never came. And it arrived, finally, from the outside. What he chose to do with it, nobody could have predicted. Least of all him. He was 41 years old the afternoon it happened. 41. That age matters, because 41 is not the age when people are supposed to blow everything up and start over. 41 is when most people have already told themselves that the window for that kind of thing has closed, that the choices are made, that you work with what you have and you stop dreaming about what else might have been possible. He was driving through Detroit when he passed an abandoned preschool. The property was completely consumed. Weeds overtaking the sidewalks, overgrowth swallowing the grounds, the whole place wearing the particular look of something that used to matter and got forgotten. Detroit has that look in a lot of places. A city that was once one of the most powerful in America, hollowed out over decades, carrying its history in the form of empty buildings and unmowed lots and homes that once held families and now hold silence. Most people would have felt a flicker of sadness and kept driving. He pulled over. He walked up to that property with no camera, no audience, no agreement with anyone, no idea what he was starting. Just a man who couldn't drive past something broken without at least trying to do something about it. He started pulling weeds with his bare hands. That one afternoon became a mission. That mission eventually found an audience. He became known in Detroit as a kind of one-man cleanup crew, showing up at properties across the city, doing the work for free, and documenting what he found and what he left behind. The channel he built grew to nearly 1 million subscribers. The views climbed past 140 million. But none of that was the plan. There was no plan. There was just a preschool on a Tuesday, and a man who couldn't look away. Here's what the inspiring version of this story usually skips right over. When he left his corporate career to do this full time, he had never been self-employed. Not once. Not for a single day of his adult life. 20 years inside a structure, and then no structure. No guaranteed paycheck. No title to lean on. No system to catch him if he fell. He has described that leap honestly. It wasn't exhilarating. It was terrifying. The kind of terrifying that lives in your stomach at 3 a.m. when you're calculating whether the decision you made is going to cost your family something they can't recover from. His wife didn't support the idea in theory. She backed it when it was just a man with a mower and a belief that this was what he was supposed to be doing. That kind of support. The real kind, not the congratulatory kind, is what made it possible to keep going through the moments when nothing made sense yet. The name he chose for his work wasn't accidental. He was 41 at that preschool. What the world might call a midlife crisis, he calls a midlife mission. But those two things are closer together than they sound. Because what came next in Detroit was not clean. It was not tidy. And it was not safe. If you've been moved by this man's story so far, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. There are people in your life who have been driving past their own broken things for years. Maybe this is the story that helps them stop. If you only watch the transformation videos, you'd think this work looks something like deeply satisfying manual labor. Pull some weeds, mow some grass, stand back and feel good about what you did. What the camera doesn't always show is the part where strangers call the police on him while he's actively helping someone who asked for help. Working alone in a city like Detroit means working in a place that has been let down enough times that even generosity can look suspicious. He learned that quickly. He's been reported for trespassing while standing on a property whose owner personally invited him there. He's been confronted mid-cleanup by angry neighbors who assumed the worst before asking a single question. He's had to stand in front of officers, covered in sweat, hours into a free cleanup, and calmly explain why he's not the threat here. He handled those moments with a patience that is either deeply impressive or quietly heartbreaking, depending on how you look at it. In one video, he paused his work while a neighbor circled the block trying to file a complaint against him. He looked at the camera with a kind of earned calm and said the property might not be worth finishing, that the city had asked him to come, that they'd see what the police had to say. That calm didn't come from nowhere. It came from understanding something important, that some communities have been let down by outsiders showing up with good intentions and leaving behind something worse than what was there before. When kindness arrives in a place that has been failed repeatedly, it doesn't always read as kindness at first. It reads as a setup. He understands that. He doesn't take it personally. He just keeps working. But the confrontations are only part of what makes this hard. The other part is purely physical. He has worked in 90-degree heat with a shovel on properties that most people wouldn't step onto. Some transformations run close to 3 full days. Equipment pushed to its limits, case after case of water,